Welcome to Good Screenwriting. I'm Trevor Meyer, and this week I want to answer the question, are nice guy characters harder to write than villains or anti-heroes? My answer to that question is no, at least in my experience, and I may be interpreting this a little bit differently than the other people who have answered this question. For example, a nice guy character, does that mean that they're perfect? No. Does that mean that they have no flaws? No. Does it mean that they have to be weak and a doormat and have people walk all over them? No. So, what is a nice guy character? I guess it's just a character with more positive traits and fewer negative traits. So, we're talking about three different kinds of characters here. So, let's handle each category by itself. Nice guy. A nice guy character like Captain America or Superman would be a character who is generally good and selfless. Now, that can be read as a very soft type of character if you don't do it right. So, I'm not encouraging you to write a character who is reactive or wimpy or helpless or anything like that. There is value in strength. I've heard before that women are not attracted to bad boys versus good guys. Those are two different, those categories have no correlation to what women want. It's strong versus weak. It's not good versus bad. So if a character is good but strong, that still works, okay? If they're good and weak, that's bad. Okay, that doesn't work. Bad and strong still works. Bad and weak, that's just sad. So it's really weakness versus strength that is the determining factor in whether or not a character is someone that you want to follow, because we don't want to follow a pushover, because at the end of the day, these are fantasies. So you may be able to identify with the goody two-shoes character, or you may be able to identify with the bad boy or bad girl character. Either way, it's a fantasy about achieving your goals. It's a fantasy about having more courage to pursue what you believe in. So the difference being, and I wouldn't just go with Captain America here if we're talking about the Marvel Universe. Spider-Man is a nice guy. Black Panther is a nice guy. Thor, by the time you get to, say, Thor the Dark World, is a nice guy, okay? Now, you might be saying, I don't know, man, like, he seems pretty awesome to be a nice guy. Yeah, you can still be awesome and be a nice guy. Now, an anti-hero. What would be an anti-hero? Tony Stark, for sure, in almost every movie, is an anti-hero. He's not traditionally heroic. He is a hero despite himself, despite his flaws, despite his weaknesses. That's how he finds his heroism. Batman is an anti-hero. The Punisher is an anti-hero. Wolverine is an anti-hero. These are characters who are deeply flawed, have lots of negative qualities, and yet still in the end do the right thing. And I think both are equally interesting as long as there's some form of contrast. So I think it works to have a character who's pretty much all good. Well, not all good, but a nice guy who is up against forces that are opposing him. So, as somebody said in the comments, Winter Soldier, Captain America the Winter Soldier, he is the one good, nice, strong guy in the middle of a world of corruption and darkness and opposing forces. So there's something admirable about that quality of not surrendering, of not compromising on your morals and your values. Now, on the other hand, you have the contrast of an anti-hero where they're maybe being criticized about their flaws, at least in the beginning of the movie. So when Tony Stark is being selfish, he's got friends telling him he's being selfish. When he's being irresponsible, he's got friends around him telling him he's being irresponsible. The point being, maybe he has a lesson to learn by the end of it, whereas in Captain America, maybe everyone else has a lesson to learn from him. So in Captain America the Winter Soldier, everyone's saying, you need to get more on board with secrecy and lies. You need to get more on board with extermination of threats. You need to get more on board with aggression and preemptive action. And he's like, no, this is all terrible stuff. The great line from Winter Soldier, this isn't freedom, this is fear. So the point being, he's mostly right in that situation. Now, in real life, there are a lot of gray areas, but he's mostly right. And the other characters have something to learn from him. So usually in a morality tale, it's the more negative characters who have something to learn from the more positive characters. So your character either acts as a mentor to everyone else, or everyone else acts as a mentor to your character. Somebody has to change. So if your main character is already the most enlightened one in the whole thing, then it's his mission to turn everyone else around, or at least stand his ground. If your hero is the flawed one and he's surrounded by people who are telling him that he needs to change to be a better person, then it's your hero who needs to change. Now, both are interesting to me. I really like the idea of having a character who doesn't necessarily change because he doesn't need to change, because he is already the kind of person that other people should try to aspire to be. Now let's talk about the villains. Are villains easier to write than either heroes or anti-heroes? They're more fun to write. Let's do that. I want to make the distinction that easier to write, harder to write? No. More fun though, yeah. Villains are fun because they're always having fun. The reason they should always be having fun is because they're not tortured in the way that heroes are. So it's one of the reasons why it's so much fun to pretend to be a villain, or for an actor to play a villain. Because if you go back to, say, Captain America, the First Avenger, you ever notice that villains tend to smile more than heroes? It's because they're having fun. They don't have the weight of the world on their shoulders. So, and they don't have inner conflict. Most villains don't have inner conflict. They probably should, but they don't. They are absolutely sure that what they're doing is totally justified. So Captain America is the kind of character who would feel tortured, who would feel like, I should do this, but I don't really want to. I'm having some inner conflict. I have to choose between these two bad options, or I have these two good options and I can only pick one. The kind of dilemmas that heroes deal with. Same with Tony Stark. Tony Stark is the kind of character who has dilemmas. He can, he's in a bad situation. He's got to pick the least sucky option that he can go with. A villain is usually in control. A good villain is usually the one who's like, you know what? I am going to do whatever I want, and I'm going to crush anyone who gets in my way. God, it's good to be me. That's the attitude of a villain. You look at Hela from Thor Ragnarok. You look at the Joker from The Dark Knight. You can even look at, I would say, Hannibal Lecter, but Hannibal Lecter, interestingly enough, never plays the villain in the movies. Maybe in the TV show, but usually he's actually a dark mentor character or the hero. But I think that villains can be tough to write just because they're less relatable, but in a way there's some wish fulfillment there. Not that people want to go out and, hurt people and kill people in most cases. I think that the thing that's charming about a villain is power and getting things done no matter what. Knowing what you want, going for it, not letting anything stop you. Now, the other thing that's fun about villains is that you don't have to hold them back. So you could say, the hero wants to get what he wants, and you got to throw a bunch of obstacles at him to stop him from getting what he wants. And you got to find a reason why he's not all powerful. The villain, you do actually want him to succeed a lot. You want the villain to be all powerful if you can. So there's no restriction. It's pure wish fulfillment to write a villain. So I think the easiest character to write is actually the nice guy character, because you run the risk in either case of having an unlikable character. And some people say unlikable is not something you even have to worry about because, hey, look at Scarface, look at Walter White from Breaking Bad, look at Hannibal Lecter. Are they likable? Yeah, they kind of are, That's the thing. They all have qualities about them that are a little bit charming. So you run the risk, though. I remember Star Trek 2009 had to be re-edited because test audiences did not like the new Kirk, because he would lie and use women and cheat, and he was just kind of a jerk and nobody really liked him. So they went through the entire movie and edited it down to make him a more likable character that people could relate to. He still has flaws. Characters should have flaws, but they had to soften it a little bit, because if your character's too much of a jerk, people don't want to go on a journey with him. So that's the balancing act with the anti-hero. Now, with the nice guy hero, the risk is that they could be a little too bland, a little unbelievable. So you still give them some flaws. I mean, give them some doubt, maybe, some anger, some frustration. They're not all good all the time, but a general, selflessness is okay to have in a hero. And the villain, I'd say, the only thing you can do wrong with the villain is to make them weak or doubt themselves to such an extreme that they're no longer a threat. I would say the most pure character should be the villain, And while I do enjoy Kylo Ren's inner conflict in The Force Awakens, too much of it, he does end up sounding kind of like a whiny brat, That's the trouble you run into with that character, is that the conflict between light and dark is really interesting, but when he comes off as weak or powerless or not in control, that's something that you got to look out for villains. So, all of that being said, the easiest character to write for me is the nice guy hero. The second easiest character to write for me is the villain, both of which have a sort of purity to them. The hardest character to write for me is the anti-hero, because how far is too far? At what point do they become repulsive or unlikable? How good do they have to be good? So that's the order of difficulty I would rank them at. Nice guy hero is the easiest for me, then the villain, and then the anti-hero. It's the mix that's the toughest part. But that's not the case for everyone. And based on the answers I've seen so far, it seems like people actually struggle with the nice guy character. Just remember, nice does not mean weak. And this applies to real life too, by the way. Nice does not mean you're weak. Nice does not mean that you're a pushover. Nice does not mean that everyone gets to walk all over you. Nice means that you have a generally selfless nature about you, and you're willing to do the right thing while still being strong, courageous, and standing up for what you believe in. All right? So, there's the inspirational speech for this week. What do you think about this? What kind of character is the easiest for you to write? What kind of character is the hardest? Are they all the same? Does it even matter? Leave your comments in the section below. This is Good Screenwriting, and I'm Trevor Meyer. See you next time.